Welcome into the Poetry Tavern, a place to discuss both reading and writing poetry, spotlighting new poems and ideas every week. Hello everyone and welcome into the Poetry Tavern. I'm Charlotte, your host, as always. If this is your first episode, please feel free to go back and check out some of our earlier episodes. This week we're going to be talking about haikus. Now, I'm going to be honest, before I started researching for this episode, I didn't know a lot about haikus. Now I've spent a little bit of time with it, and let's just dive into what is a haiku. A haiku is a 3-line poem that doesn't necessarily rhyme. There's no, compulsion for it to rhyme within the framework of the structure. It's a 3-line poem, so short. I mean, it's not, sonnet length. It's not like an epic. It's 3 lines, but you can pack a lot into 3 lines. And it's traditionally a Japanese form, but when translated to English, the form traditionally goes 5 syllable, 7 syllable, 5 syllable. Traditionally in their theming are around nature and the seasons, but that isn't a restraint of it. It's just something that is a part of the tradition of haikus rather than being an element of the required structure. The way that a lot of traditional poetry would require you to use a structure and then you can become more freeform in modern poetry. So let's get into actually looking at some haiku poems. Because of the short nature of the haiku poems, I know that in previous weeks I've done 2 poems, but I've actually picked out 3 for this week. So just because they're shorter and it allows us to cover more ground in the time I got that I don't spend waffling. So, one of the first poems that I came across when I was looking into haikus, and a poem that I came across time and time again when I was trying to find information, was The Old Pond by Matsuo Basho. I hope I pronounced that name correctly. One of the things I found fascinating about it is, obviously it's got a traditional Japanese version, which I will not try and butcher, but it also has been translated over and over again by multiple different people. The version that I'm going to read today is the William J. Higginson version, just because it's the first one I found that made me put this on the list of potential poems. So yeah, here we go. An old silent pond. A frog jumps into the pond. Splash. Silence again. Now, if you were to directly translate this poem from the original Japanese, it would simply be the old pond. A frog leaps in, sound of water. But I think in Higginson's translation, we see the fitting of these same ideas into the 575 formula that's provided for English language haikus. And I also think that I, not being a native speaker of Japanese, or even really having an understanding of the language at all, a lot of the nuance is lost in direct translation. And so having that expanded version where it says the same thing, basically, but I just feel like there's something in moving away from a direct translation and adding nuance in that makes it easier for people who don't speak the language and cannot understand the nuances of the original language. Adding the nuance back in is something that I think works, especially for me. One of the things that I really liked about this poem was that it very much follows the form of what a haiku is supposed to be. you have the original image in the first two lines, and then you have the disruption. What this is kind of talking about, and I said that traditional haikus are often talking about seasons and nature, but I think this is a very natural thing of the living creature interrupting the natural world and the natural world finding its balance again. So you can see even in like 3 lines we get a lot of ideas pulled from it. So our next poem is another one that's been translated from Japanese. It's A Poppy Blooms by Katsushika Hokusai. Hokusai? I really hope I'm saying these names right. If I'm not and anyone knows, please do let me know. Anyway, I picked this one because I love poems about writing. I love writing about writing. There's just something so fun about describing the thing, but you have to do the thing to describe the thing. There's just something really fun about it. So I picked this poem because it is about writing. And it uses the blooming of the flowers to talk about the process of writing. So I'll just read it. I write, erase, rewrite, erase again, and then a poppy blooms. So in a way, this is another one that's talking about, in my head, it's sort of talking about spring, but it's also talking about the process of creating a new piece of poetry and a new piece of art in the world. And just like the spring is a time of rebirth, the flowers bloom and the world becomes slightly brighter, like a new piece of writing is born, but it isn't born in an instant. You write and you rewrite, and a piece is conceived and then reborn, and it's just really fun and interesting. I need to stop describing things as fun. It's just interesting to talk about writing in such a way that the process of editing is not just changing the writing, but bringing something new to it, bringing a new beauty to it in a way. And maybe I'm digging too far into this, but I sincerely enjoy it. The poem and writing, both. It is genuinely great that this is part of the power of poetry, to be able to say, like physically say so little, but include so much in it. Yeah, I just think that's fabulous. So, on to our last poem, which is an English language poem for once. I just figured that with this being a form of poetry that originated in Japan, I should really look at what people using the Japanese language are writing with it. But obviously there is a lot of English language haiku as well. So our last haiku is Haiku for You by Sonia Sanchez. Love between us is speech and breathing. Loving you is a long river running. Now, this haiku, instead of talking about the natural beauty of a specific season, as is seen in some of the more traditional Japanese haiku poetry, uses the imagery of nature to talk about an emotion. It uses the haiku form and a metaphor to express a feeling of love, of describing a specific love between the speaker of the poem and whoever they're addressing it to. It's a really short, sweet, sort of beautiful way of using the haiku form to express something Okay. Thank you for coming all the way to the end with me as I talked a little bit about haikus, read some haikus, talked a little bit more detail about those specific haikus. I really appreciate you listening to this podcast. Next week I'm going to be looking at Ars Poetica, which is poems that talk about the art of poetry and making poetry and using the form and techniques of poetry. And talking about a little bit how that started, a little bit of how it originated, and digging up some poems that, would be considered to fall under this banner. So please join us next week for that whole shebang.